This program is supported by the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University. The Cronkite School offers undergraduate and graduate degrees and other professional development opportunities for writers and storytellers. For more information, visit cronkite.asu.edu.
Welcome to WriteLane. This podcast features Tampa Bay Times Enterprise reporter Lane Gregory, and my name is Maria Carlo. I'm a former Enterprise editor at the Times, which helped us kick off this podcast in 2017. Now it's being presented by the Poynter Institute and sponsored by the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University. And the episodes this year will focus on some of the winners of the 2025 Poynter Journalism Prizes. As always, Lane and I want to go deeper on the subject of craft, so these episodes are geared toward exploring the reporting, the writing, and the editing behind this award-winning work. These podcasts will be available everywhere you listen to podcasts and on the Poynter Institute's YouTube channel. Joining us today is Sean Sullivan, an enterprise reporter on NJ.com's video team. Sean was the winner of this year's Roy Peter Clark Prize for Excellence in Short Writing for a 90-second TikTok he created. Yeah, a TikTok. Hold that thought. The 2026 Poynter Journalism Prize is open for entries on January 5th, so mark those calendars. Today's topic, a TikTok investigation. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
We're going to get to that particular story, but we wanted to start by asking you to give us some background on your career path before we get to your current role. And so what's the background on Sean Sullivan, longtime newspaper guy?
Sure. Yeah. I sometimes joke that I was raised in a lab to become a newspaper reporter. I fell into it, in high school. I was the editor of my high school paper, newspaper and education kid. My dad was a newspaper reporter, got out of it early. I'm not a Nepo baby. He became an attorney, got a real job.
You saw the tea leaves and you said, the hell with that.
But yeah, so I did that, and then I did the same thing in college. And at the same time, I was also always a little bit of an AV nerd. I was a skateboarder growing up, and so me and my friends, we made skate videos, and then we made, stupid little skits, our own version of Saturday Night Live, and what have you. And that was always kind of just a side thing. Over the years, I always leaned on multimedia skills, I think, to complement my reporting, but I always really thought of myself as a writer. And so early in my career, I started out, my first job out of college was actually as a web producer for masslive.com, a local news publication up in Western Massachusetts. And then I came down to NJ.com, where I've spent most of my career. I've done everything from covering local government to, I think I've done most of my work that's distinguished myself doing state government accountability reporting. But yeah, I've done everything. I'll write a weather story. I will a human interest story. I've kind of done everything except sports.
I think you said something about you like to embed news in places, smuggle news into places that people don't expect it. How does that work on TikTok and Instagram and other social pitches that maybe people aren't looking for anything other than a cat video and they come across some investigation you've done?
Yeah, I think that was part of, the appeal of the platform for me is, I just sort of noticed it sort of became, as a newspaper reporter, especially, became a sub-in for what TV used to be. Like, it used to be you did go do a big investigation and then you go on television to talk about it. And that's the only time your family has any understanding of what you do for a living. And these days I was noticing that I was doing this stuff and then I'd go on, I'd go on social media to promote it. And that was how people were seeing it. And so it just struck me, it wasn't that I wanted to stop doing the work, the big investigations and stuff like that. It was just more that I wanted to go where the people were, and kind of see, how we can use the tools that that social media give us in terms of content creation and apply that to journalism. And so it's very much I'm the goal of the work that I'm producing is not to deliver a daily report to regular audiences that know and rely on me. I'm not even really thinking of myself personally as an influencer, though I am, I'm trying to grow an individual audience. But most of the people who are coming across me, I'm under no illusion, have no idea who I am. They're encountering it for the first time. And so very much the charge here is like, go put our journalism in front of people who would never encounter it otherwise. I think that's why I've been given the kind of long leash by editors that I've been given to experiment in this way, is that, we're at a period right now where we're not exactly sure, the people in charge aren't exactly sure where things are headed, and will admit to as much. And so I think of this as research and development in a way, and very much about trying to engage audiences that are, not even indifferent to news, but some of them openly hostile to it, openly distrustful of the mainstream media. I think that's a big a thing that I've cracked into a little bit. I like to joke that what I've done is, I don't sound like a news anchor. I sound like a guy that's sitting next to you on the bus. So, the kids like that. Authenticity is a buzzword we hear a lot these days. And, I find it a little bit funny because even what I'm doing is an act. It's all an act. It's a part of a persona, but it plays better than the kind of stilted, buttoned up news anchor. I think that is it's a media that has its time and its place, but it also has its limitations in the digital age. And I just think that people want us to be a little bit realer and kind of meet them where they're at.
I shared a couple of your videos, your TikToks, with my son and his partner who were late 20s, early 30s. And their reaction was like, I would never have read an investigation about that, never in a million years. But I love that video and I want to know what happened. So I think that segment, they're news consumers, but to sit down and read an investigation is not on their radar, whereas they could flip up a TikTok on the subway. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's succeeded. Let me ask you, do you have like a written piece that goes with the TikToks and the Instagram, or is that the whole piece is what we saw there in the mall story?
For that particular story, that was the whole piece. Especially starting out, my charge was explicitly, it was explicitly TikTok. Like you're doing anything for any other. I've since expanded. We're putting stuff because there's a lot of cross pollination. I'm putting stuff on mostly on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube these days. But starting out, the charge was, this is an experiment. Sean is just going to make TikToks for a period of time, and we're doing reported TikToks. We're not worrying about writing the news article. I think as a writer, my impulse is I still want to write the stories and stuff like that. It is also it can also be liberating to just be like, okay, I'm just I don't have to write the news story at all. In that particular case, it was the charge was this is news. This is a news story that only lives on TikTok.
So you want to explain his award-winning talk?
Yeah, so it won a prize for writing, right? And the writing, it was short writing, the Roy Peter Clark Prize, 800 words or less. How many words are in there spoken? And then there's also written words on the TikTok itself, right?
Yeah, I would say all told we're under 400 words or something like that. It was fairly tight. I will say, people always point to the brevity of my TikToks. I don't think that's a good metric because they're very information dense. I can get a lot more words in than the average news reader.
Basically, you go shopping for a pair of pants in a mall that may or may not be open because it may or may not need to pay taxes, is what sort of it breaks down.
We're here at the mall, which is not open. It's obviously not closed, but according to the owners, it's not open, so you shouldn't call this mall open.
At least not for tax purposes. This is the American dream. The mega mall in the Meadowlands that took so long to build it's on the Wikipedia page for Boondoggle. Oh, you thought that place was open? Well, you're wrong. Because if it was open, they could owe the government millions in payment in lieu of taxes. Some towns in the Meadowlands say the American Dream owe the money they were supposed to get once the mall opened. So now we have this legal fight over what open actually means. 555, the company that owns this place, says the deal they made with New Jersey is that they wouldn't make those payments until they were at 100% occupancy. As in, like, every store filled. I wanted to get to the bottom of this, so I went undercover as a guy who needs pants, because I happen to be a guy who needs pants, to see if the mall was open. I mean, like, open. Was I supposed to be here? I have no idea. Balenciaga? Open. Theme park? Open. Arcade? Open. The fancy sunglasses store with the animatronic buffalo and a human eye that stares directly into your soul? Also open. Yeah, there are parts of the mall that have real late capitalism vibes, but what mall doesn't these days? In a July financial filing, mall operators said this place was 87% leased. Yet in legal papers, they say between 30 and 40% of the entertainment and retail space remains vacant. So what gives? Well, the American Dream didn't return my emails, so I had to work the phones.
Thank you for calling American Dream.
I was just wondering if the mall is open today.
Yes,
The whole mall?
the entire mall.
So that settles it. The mall's open, just not like pay your taxes open. And really, isn't that the American Dream? Oh no, the eye's back. We gotta go.
That was a lawsuit that spurred you to do that, or yeah?
Yeah. So that was, when we set out to do this, I was given a pretty wide berth into what stories I pursued, but we did have a meeting with editors where I sat down and I sort of identified, I was like, I want to do something, if I'm doing this is visual, I want to do something with third places. And in, New Jersey, what are the third places? Rest stops, malls, the shore, that sort of stuff. That was where my thinking went immediately when I was like, as a writer, being like, okay, what are like visual stories I can do? And I've always been fascinated with the American Dream Mall. So to give folks who are familiar backstory, the American Dream Mall, it's the owned by 555, the owners of the Mall of America. It's in New Jersey, right across in the Meadowlands, right across from New York City. And it's one of the largest, they don't even like to call it a mall. It's an entertainment complex. And it was for a long time, had a reputation in New Jersey as being one of the biggest boondoggles in state history. Chris Christie famously said that it was the ugliest building he'd ever seen. It was a construction project in the swamp, started in, I want to say, 2000, the 2000s. So let's say 2008, thereabouts. And saw delay after delay after delay. And so as a reporter, it seemed very fascinating to me because I'm always trying to make very unsexy topics sexy. That's sort of my sweet spot. And I just came to, as a writer, I came to regard the American Dream Mall as kind of a metaphor for how things are now, right? It's a giant monument to consumerism. It's behind on its taxes. I can send you another TikTok I did where I hung out with an encampment of workers around the holidays because they were trying to unionize, and the ownership there was allegedly meddling with efforts there. And so this is a place, it's like, not only is it kind of visually iconic, but in New Jersey, malls are, a thing, that malls are where we brush shoulders with each other, when we're not at the shore. So yeah, I sort of saw that at one, and that was something that we had covered a little bit, this lawsuit, and the local publications and Bloomberg, the financial publications that covered this lawsuit, kind of playing it straight that this was a pilot dispute, payment in lieu of taxes, a fight, and like just reading the 8th paragraph in one of these stories, it was just about the fact that the nut of the argument was over occupancy. And the argument was that if this place is not 100% occupied, then is it technically open? And anybody who knows anything about malls will tell you that even the most successful malls never run at 100% occupancy. Yeah. So it was a story that, frankly, as far as an investigation goes, it was not a heavy lift. But I tend to think of that as, there was a lot of earned knowledge in there. That was, 10 years of covering the region went into that 90-second TikTok. the writing in that piece is very tight. But some of those phrases, the mega mall in the Meadowlands that took so long to build, it's on the Wikipedia page for Boondoggle. That was something I noticed probably in 2014 that that there was a picture of this thing on the Wikipedia page for Boondoggle, and I just kind of filed that away. And that's something you bring up anytime someone brings up the mall, something I bring up in conversation. So as a writer, that's just one of those nuts that just sticks in the back of your head. And I finally found somewhere to put it.
All right, we're going to take a break here for a moment, and then we'll get right back into the conversation with Sean.
As a journalist, what keeps you up at night? At Poynter, we understand the pressures from shrinking resources to shifting audiences to tough ethical calls. Our expert trainers and coaches bring decades of experience to help you meet those challenges. We don't offer generic approaches. Poynter delivers strategies tailored to your needs, including training managers to lead high-performing teams, demystifying AI, and offering personal coaching to help move change forward or navigate a crisis. We work with news organizations large and small, local and national, commercial and nonprofit, as well as content creators and communicators in marketing and public relations. Let us help create the solution you need. Go to poynter.org/consulting-and-coaching today.
You talked a little bit about the iteration of this and how you got things going, but I'm fascinated that you were covering the trial of former U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, and you get into this with this like federal corruption trial, because that says Instagram video to me. Yeah, like I'm just curious. Like it sounded like the editors were on board. Like, and you guys, I mean, that was a funny video too. I mean, like, and showing the bags of cash and all of that. I mean, like, how does that conversation even begin? Like, I'm going to go over there with a camera and I'm going to do this.
I mean, to be frank, the conversation came at a time where we were kind of figuring out what to do with me. I was,
there's that guy in the newsroom. We don't know what to do with him.
I've been at the organization a long time. I was trying to, frankly, trying to figure out what my next move was career-wise. And so I was pursuing this video stuff kind of on my own, at the same time that I had kind of pitched covering the Menendez trial. This is too inside baseball, but I was like, I bet I could get them to let me do what I want with the Menendez trial, because it's in New York and I'm the only one willing to take the bus because I live on a bus line. But it was I saw it as an opportunity. This is a high profile case. I just knew that like a lot of organizations, we didn't have the resources that we used to have, and so it was creating a practical problem. Like, how are we going to cover this trial was an actual practical problem, and I like to turn practical problems into like creative problems. And so that's why, like in the video you mentioned, the video that I did covering the Menendez trial, I play up the fact that I'm commuting by bus because I find that funny and it's relatable. That's the other thing, is like, going back to the audience thing and the authenticity thing. Like, I am so tired of hearing the term media elite. I drive a Honda Fit. Yeah. And so I resist, the implication that I'm becoming an influencer or anything by doing this stuff. But I do feel it's important to kind of show who you are, show yourself in the way that, every good magazine writer, going back, put themselves in the story, not as the star, but as the avatar for the reader, as, somebody that they can relate to. And so that's very much what I'm trying to do with these videos, is demystify stuff. Like, okay, I'm taking the bus to U.S. Senator Bob Menendez's federal corruption trial. I have to leave my phone downstairs. I have to go upstairs. To be your eyes and ears, I'm going to come out and I'm going to, at lunch, I'm going to pace around outside and tell you what I saw, in language that you're going to understand. I'm going to tell you that the bag of cash, looked like something between a light load of laundry and a good haul of Halloween candy. I think that people appreciate that when you're not just doing the kind of buttoned up stand up outside the courthouse that kind of looks, that everybody's seen a little time and kind of, looks a little bit manufactured.
I think what's great about it is that you, like, here's this, like, this heavy topic that a lot of people would be covering. But like you said, you're doing it in a different way, and it's so inviting, and it's kind of like this, yeah, let me demystify this whole, there's a federal corruption trial. What is it about? And yeah, I love the bags of cash showing up. That was hysterical.
So, yeah, so you're like not trying to be the voice of authority. You're trying to be like the guy next to you in the bus. Like, hey, this is just what happened.
I am, but I'm not, because this is a hang up I really have with influencers and podcast hosts right now. They love to do this thing. I'm not a journalist, so I'm not a journalist. Like, and then they book
You're like, I am a
Kamala
journalist.
Harris or Trump or whatever, and it's like, okay, you've got some responsibility here, buddy. And so I don't like this whole like I'm not oh, I'm just some guy. Like, I put in the work. Like, I do my homework. And what I'm trying to show you is like, I'm a real guy who takes the bus to the city to get the information that you need. And so, yeah, there is an element of everyman to what I'm doing. But that's only because I think that's always been my approach as a writer and as a journalist, is trying to kind of demystify these institutions and these processes that really are not as complicated as we make them out to be, and try to get people interested in them, rather than, the thing that I hate about social media is this idea that you have to just feed the algorithm and give people crap because that's what does best. It's like, you can engage people's curiosity. This is, sometimes I feel like the conversations over social media are the same conversations they were having in the 70s and 80s over television and stuff like that. And even when it's talked about the stuff that I'm doing on social media, as if it's like so novel and so new, like there is a grand tradition of charismatic weirdos from newspaper newsrooms going into TV, right? Like, and so that really what I'm doing, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just, I'm just taking the same creative approach that I would have if I was a magazine writer in, 1995. I just have different tools and, different economic realities.
It seems like you have this freedom to kind of be conversational, to be funny, to do to do things that traditionally we wouldn't do if you were approaching these as a straight-on story, right? As an editor, I'm thinking about your editors. Like, do they try to rein you in, or do they like, hey, part of this whole experiment is you be you and see what happens?
I give them credit. My editors do a fair amount of protecting me from myself, but they also, I think, have really encouraged me. I think I'm probably more in my own head about not wanting to become a news personality. I'm very much a reporter's reporter, and so I do not necessarily value the contributions of news personalities. There is something to be said for being relatable and for being able to relate to people, I think is a real skill. But they have encouraged me to really be myself, and experiment with form and stuff like that. And I think that part of that is why like some of the stuff that I'm doing is exclusive to these platforms, because they don't want me to feel like I have to also do that while conforming to the like 500 word inverted pyramid news article, which can mess with your head a little bit. I am in a way, in the way I approach my day-to-day work, kind of deconstructing the news article and the news video, trying to think like, okay, what are the kind of core components here, and what's the stuff that we're doing just because it's boilerplate.
Right.
How much of what you do, you're talking about broadcasting at lunch at the Menendez trial too, like you're not like going home and synthesizing all of this and writing a script. How much of it is written and planned versus like you're in the moment and you're just going with it?
I mean, it all depends. With the Menendez trial, that was sort of a transitionary thing that inspired them to create this kind of TikTok gig for me. So I actually was writing mostly weekly. We were running AP wire copy, and I was writing kind of longer feature stories, and then in between doing these videos. And so now with the video stuff, I'm writing scripts, and then also kind of going out and vamping a little bit. So that's been kind of more of the fun part for me is figuring that out. I mean, the camera stuff, the on-camera stuff, it's something that I guess I've always had a natural talent for. Only really leaned into in the past few years, and so I usually will go to if I'm doing anything on scene, I will kind of just go and just kind of vamp, crack jokes, and see what I do. And then, like any other writer, on the 30-minute drive or whatever, I'll kind of write my lead. And so it definitely it sort of demands a mixture of preparation and improv, because you need to sound conversational, and if you're just reading something, very often that sounds rote. I mean, I'm a pretty good news reader, but you're never going to sell it as good as when you're just kind of talking off the cuff.
Right. Right. Okay. I hate this question, but I want to ask you anyway. Can you talk to us a little bit about data and like how many views did your TikTok get on the Menendez versus
Mhm.
reads or clicks did your story get? Like, how do you compare that in terms of looking at how, I don't know, what do they call it? Your metrics, your
Yeah,
metrics.
yeah. No, look, metrics are a reality of our business. It's like it's sort of it's like money. Like you're not supposed to talk about it, but it's not. It's in our interest to talk about it. So, but I honestly I don't know the Menendez one. I know that the American Dream one. I mean, that's been a real success in our newsroom just because that went bona fide viral. It was, I don't know, about 500,000, 600,000, seven hundred
Wow.
thousand, and also got a writing award from the Poynter Institute. So that sort of checks both
Woo.
boxes. But yeah, you kind of I try to swim towards like, okay, what's the stuff that people will click on, but I really try not to get in my own head about that stuff. A successful video to me will get like 50,000 views on our Instagram, something like that. But like again, these are like metrics that I haven't been given hard numbers. Like I'll
That's
just
a
be perfectly
lot
honest
though.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, what's a good
but
story? What's a
uh,
written story that's good?
I mean, I'll get in trouble if I start giving out too many internal numbers from Parsley and stuff like that. But but I will say that, in another life, if like 10,000 people clicked on my story total, like, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And as a local reporter, that remains a big deal. Like I kind of like for me nowadays, like it's very easy on like with half of like our brand account has 500,000 followers on Instagram. It's fairly easy to rack up like 30,000 views, and that seems to make a video kind of worthwhile. But again, this is all in my head. This is not stuff that's coming from editors. And really, the metric that I'm chasing is watch time and shares, and
Mhm.
and the reason for that is because those are sort of less cynical metrics. Like you can juice views, right? We can always use schlock and horror and outrage to get people to click on stuff. But to get people to stick around and actually keep watching is one thing, and to get people to then share that, to go, okay, this is something that's important to me. Like this is something that I enjoyed so much that I'm going to share it with a friend. So. Those are kind of the metrics that I'm chasing there. But this is still so kind of early that my editors really have not, and have had to kind of reassure me, like we do not have specific traffic expectations here because I think that once that comes into the equation, you do start calculating things differently, and I think that's always going to be, it's since the rise of TV news and ratings, that's always been a really uncomfortable dance for newsrooms.
You want to finish up with the burning
Okay,
question?
so I've got, we have one more question. We have to close this narrative arc. Did you get the pants?
I did get the pants. I did not buy the jeans. There's two different pairs of pants in there, but I don't have I can't there's somewhere here. I wear them all the time. I went to Uniqlo.
There you go.
Thank goodness.
Very very
Shout
very
out.
comfortable pants.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to all of you guys for listening and watching, and thanks again to Arizona State and the Poynter Institute. Don't forget you can find old episodes on poynter.org/WriteLane and wherever you get your podcasts. Please join our Facebook group if you'd like to be notified when new episodes appear. This podcast was produced by Dalia Colon. Technical support was provided by Sam Posnak. From Poynter, music was composed and performed by Dan DeGregory.